In the spring of 1971, archaeologist David Stronach carefully brushed away millennia of accumulated sand and debris from a partially exposed stone relief at Pasargadae, the ancient capital of Cyrus the Great, when his trowel struck something unexpected beneath the Iranian plateau's weathered surface. What emerged from that painstaking excavation was not merely another fragment of carved limestone, but a piece of cuneiform inscription that would fundamentally alter our understanding of how the Persian Empire, the largest contiguous land empire the ancient world had ever known, first took root in the harsh, mountainous terrain of what is now southwestern Iran. The relief, depicting a four-winged guardian figure that would become synonymous with Persian royal iconography, bore traces of pigment. That spectroscopic analysis would later reveal to be lapis lazuli imported from Afghanistan, carnelian from India, and gold leaf hammered so thin that it spoke to metallurgical techniques far more sophisticated than previously attributed to the early Persians. As Stronach documented each layer of stratigraphy, recording pottery sherds that showed clear influences from both Mesopotamian and Central Asian ceramic traditions, he realized that this site represented not just the capital of a conquering dynasty, but the archaeological evidence of a cultural synthesis that had been occurring across the Iranian plateau for centuries. Before Cyrus ever dreamed of empire, the surrounding landscape, with its carefully engineered canal irrigation systems channeling snowmelt from the Zagros Mountains across otherwise arid plains, revealed through ground-penetrating radar surveys and satellite imagery a complex network of settlements, agricultural installations, and administrative centers that suggested the Persian Empire's administrative genius was rooted not in sudden innovation, but in the gradual perfection of governance techniques that had been developing across the region since at least the 8th century BCE. Modern isotope analysis of human remains from pre-Achaemenid burial sites in the region has revealed dietary patterns that included not only local barley and wheat, but also millet varieties that originated in Central Asia and fruits that could only have arrived through extensive trade networks, suggesting that the cosmopolitan character that would define Persian imperial administration was already emerging among the pastoral and agricultural communities of Fars province long before the rise of the great kings. The material culture recovered from these early layers, including bronze horse bits decorated with griffin motifs, ceramic vessels bearing Proto-Elamite script, and gold jewelry incorporating techniques known from contemporary Scythian metalwork, painted a picture of a people already comfortable navigating between the settled civilizations of Mesopotamia and the nomadic cultures of the steppes, a cultural fluidity that would prove essential to their later imperial success. Carbon dating of organic materials from cooking hearths and grain storage facilities has established that by 700 BCE, communities across the region that would become the Persian heartland were already practicing the mixed agricultural and pastoral economy that would provide the economic foundation for imperial expansion. While neutron activation analysis of ceramic assemblages has demonstrated trade connections extending from the Indus Valley in the east to Anatolia in the west, creating the commercial networks that Persian armies would later follow in their conquests, the excavation of early ironworking sites near Persepolis has revealed furnace technologies and metallurgical techniques that were clearly derived from multiple traditions, combining Mesopotamian bronze working knowledge with iron-working techniques that showed clear connections to both Anatolian and Central Asian methods, creating the technological base that would later supply the weapons and tools necessary for imperial administration across 3 continents. When Stronach finally completed his analysis of the stratigraphy at Pasargadae, incorporating data from magnetometer surveys that revealed the full extent of the ancient city's walls and administrative buildings, he had uncovered not just the story of how Cyrus built his first capital, but the deeper narrative of how the diverse peoples of the Iranian plateau have been developing the cultural, technological, and administrative tools that would make the Persian Empire possible centuries before the first Achaemenid king ever claimed dominion over the Lands from India to Ethiopia dot the emergence of the Persian people. From the broader tapestry of Iranian-speaking tribes represents one of the most significant ethnogenetic processes in ancient history, a gradual coalescence of pastoral nomadic groups, settled agricultural communities, and urban craftsmen that can be traced through archaeological evidence, linguistic analysis, and the careful interpretation of fragmentary historical sources, spanning nearly 3 centuries of development before the rise of the Achaemenid dynasty. Archaeological surveys conducted across the Zagros Mountains and the Fars province since the 1960s have revealed a complex pattern of settlement that suggests the ancestors of the Persians were not a single migrating tribe, but rather a confederation of related groups who gradually established dominance over the region. Through a combination of military prowess, political acumen, and cultural adaptation that allowed them to integrate successfully with existing populations, while maintaining their distinctive identity. The material evidence for this process comes from a careful analysis of burial practices, settlement patterns, and material culture that shows clear continuities with earlier populations, combined with innovations that suggest the arrival and integration of new groups with different traditions and technologies. Excavations at sites like Tali Nakoti, Tali Bakan, and other locations throughout Fars province have uncovered stratified deposits that reveal a gradual transition from the late Bronze Age cultural assemblages associated with Elamite influence to new forms of material culture that incorporate elements from Central Asian steppe traditions, Mesopotamian urban crafts, and indigenous highland practices, creating the distinctive synthesis that would characterize Persian culture. The linguistic evidence derived from Old Persian inscriptions, comparative analysis with other Iranian languages, and loanwords preserved in Mesopotamian and Egyptian sources suggests that the Persian language emerged from the broader Iranian language family through a process of gradual differentiation that occurred as Persian-speaking groups settled in Fars province and began to interact intensively with Elamite-speaking populations, Semitic-speaking merchants and craftsmen, and various other ethnic groups already established in the region. Linguistic analysis has identified layers of vocabulary that reflect this complex process of cultural interaction, including agricultural terms borrowed from Elamite, religious concepts that show Indo-Iranian origins, administrative vocabulary that reveals Mesopotamian influence, and military terminology that suggests contacts with Central Asian nomadic groups. The development of Persian religious practices, as revealed through archaeological evidence from fire altars, burial customs, and symbolic representations, shows a similarly complex process of synthesis that combined Indo-Iranian traditions, associated with the worship of Ahura Mazda with indigenous Iranian highland practices, Mesopotamian astronomical knowledge, and elements that may derive from contacts with Central Asian shamanic traditions. Archaeological evidence from early Persian religious sites has revealed fire altars constructed according to principles that show clear continuities, with practices documented among other Iranian-speaking groups, but with innovations in construction technique and ritual paraphernalia that suggest the influence of Mesopotamian temple architecture and religious practices. The Persian adoption and adaptation of cuneiform writing, documented through thousands of administrative tablets recovered from sites like Persepolis, and through royal inscriptions carved at sites throughout the empire, represents a crucial moment in the development of Persian identity, as it required the modification of a writing system designed for Semitic and Sumerian languages to accommodate the grammatical and phonetic characteristics of an Indo-European language, a process that involved considerable linguistic sophistication and cultural confidence. The earliest Persian cuneiform inscriptions, dating to the reign of Darius I, reveal a fully developed administrative vocabulary and sophisticated literary style that could not have emerged overnight, suggesting that Persian scribes had been working with cuneiform for generations before the first surviving royal inscriptions were carved, developing the technical expertise necessary to create a written Persian literature. that could effectively communicate both with Persian subjects and with the multilingual populations of the empire. Modern genetic studies of populations in Fars province and surrounding regions have provided additional insights into the ethnogenetic processes that produce the Persian people, revealing patterns of genetic admixture that support the archaeological evidence for a complex process of population mixing that involved contributions from Central Asian groups, indigenous Iranian plateau populations, Mesopotamian agricultural communities, and various smaller groups, creating the genetic foundation for a population that would prove remarkably successful at integrating diverse ethnic and cultural groups into a unified imperial system. The development of distinctive Persian artistic styles, documented through the analysis of pottery, metalwork, textile fragments, and architectural decoration recovered from early Persian sites, reveals a similar process of creative synthesis that combined elements from multiple traditions into new forms that would eventually be recognized as characteristically Persian. These artistic innovations, including the development of distinctive pottery forms, the creation of new styles of metalwork that incorporated techniques from multiple traditions, and the emergence of architectural solutions that adapted Mesopotamian building techniques to Iranian highland conditions, provided the cultural foundation for the artistic achievements that would later adorn the great palaces of Persepolis and Susa, creating a distinctively Persian visual language that could communicate effectively with subjects drawn from dozens of different cultural traditions across 3 continents. The reign of Cyrus II, known to history as Cyrus the Great, represents not merely the founding of the Persian Empire, but the culmination of centuries of political, military, and cultural development among the Persian tribes, a process that transformed a regional confederation of pastoralists and agriculturalists into the most powerful military and administrative force the ancient world had yet witnessed, establishing patterns of imperial governance that would influence political development across Eurasia for more than a millennium. The archaeological evidence for Cyrus's reign, recovered from sites throughout his expanding empire and analyzed using the latest techniques in ceramic analysis, metallurgical studies, and isotope geochemistry, reveals the systematic nature of his conquests and the sophisticated administrative apparatus he developed to govern the diverse populations that fell under Persian rule. Excavations at Pasargadae, Cyrus's first capital, have uncovered the remains of a carefully planned city that incorporated architectural elements from multiple traditions, including Mesopotamian palatial design, Central Asian nomadic construction techniques, and indigenous Iranian highland building practices, creating a new form of royal architecture that would set the standard for subsequent Persian imperial construction. The famous tomb of Cyrus, analyzed using ground-penetrating radar, 3D modeling techniques, and detailed architectural surveys, has been revealed as a masterpiece of engineering that combined Lydian stoneworking techniques with design principles that show clear influences from both Mesopotamian and Egyptian funerary architecture, while incorporating innovations that reflect Persian religious beliefs about death and the afterlife. The construction techniques used in Cyrus's tomb, including the use of precisely fitted stone blocks assembled without mortar, dovetail clamps made of lead and iron to prevent seismic damage, and a drainage system designed to protect the burial chamber from water infiltration, demonstrate the level of technical sophistication that Persian royal projects had achieved by the middle of the 6th century BCE. The military campaigns that established Cyrus as ruler of the largest empire in the world. History can be reconstructed not only through the accounts preserved by later historians like Herodotus and Xenophon, but also through archaeological evidence recovered from battlefields, siege sites, and military installations throughout the territories he conquered, providing insights into Persian military organization, logistics, and tactical innovations that made his remarkable string of victories possible. Archaeological surveys of the route of Cyrus's conquest of Lydia have revealed the remains of Persian military camps, supply depots, and road improvements that demonstrate the systematic preparation that preceded his assault on Sardis, including the construction of bridges, the establishment of supply magazines at regular intervals, and the recruitment of local guides and translators who could facilitate the integration of conquered territories into the expanding Persian administrative system. The conquest of the Neo-Babylonian Empire, Cyrus's most spectacular military achievement, has left extensive archaeological traces that can be analyzed to understand both the military techniques he employed and the political strategies he used to legitimize Persian rule over the ancient world's most prestigious urban civilization. Excavations in Babylon have uncovered evidence of the surprisingly limited physical damage caused by the Persian conquest, supporting ancient accounts that Cyrus took the city through political maneuvering rather than destructive siege warfare, a pattern of conquest that would become characteristic of Persian expansion and would prove crucial to their success in governing diverse populations. The famous Cyrus cylinder, discovered in 1879 and subjected to intensive philological analysis, represents not merely a piece of royal propaganda, but a sophisticated statement of political philosophy that established the ideological foundation for Persian imperial governance, proclaiming principles of religious tolerance, respect for local traditions, and imperial responsibility for the welfare of all subjects that would distinguish Persian rule from the more exploitative approaches characteristic of earlier Mesopotamian empires. Linguistic analysis of the Cyrus cylinder has revealed the influence of both Mesopotamian royal rhetoric and distinctively Persian concepts of kingship, creating a new form of imperial ideology that could appeal simultaneously to Babylonian urban elites, Persian nobles, and the diverse ethnic groups that comprise the empire's population. The administrative innovations introduced during Cyrus's reign, documented through thousands of cuneiform tablets recovered from sites throughout the empire and analyzed using computer databases that allow for comprehensive comparison of administrative practices across different regions and time periods, reveal the emergence of a new model of imperial governance that balanced central control with local autonomy in ways that would prove remarkably durable and effective. The Persian adoption and adaptation of existing administrative systems, including Mesopotamian bureaucratic practices, Egyptian techniques for managing agricultural production, and Lydian methods for controlling commercial activity, demonstrates the pragmatic flexibility that characterized Persian imperial policy and contributed significantly to the empire's longevity and stability. Archaeological evidence from Persian administrative centers established during Cyrus's reign reveals standardized systems for record-keeping, taxation, and military recruitment that could be adapted to local conditions while maintaining overall imperial cohesion, creating the administrative foundation that would support Persian imperial expansion. Under his successors, the cultural policies implemented during Cyrus's reign, including his famous restoration of Jewish exiles to Jerusalem and his support for the reconstruction of various temples throughout the empire, represent not merely pragmatic political strategies, but the expression of a distinctive Persian approach to imperial governance that sought to harness the loyalty of subject populations by respecting their traditions and incorporating their elites into the imperial system. The archaeological evidence for these policies, including Persian-sponsored construction projects at sites throughout the empire, Persian administrative seals found in contexts that suggest the employment of local officials, and the continued production of local artistic and craft traditions under Persian patronage, reveals the systematic nature of Persian efforts to create a stable, prosperous, and culturally diverse empire that could maintain unity while respecting diversity. The monumental construction projects undertaken during the reigns of Darius I and his successors represent the most visible and archaeologically accessible evidence of Persian imperial power, administrative capability, and cultural synthesis, creating architectural complexes that not only serve practical functions as administrative centers and royal residences, but also communicated powerful ideological messages about the nature and extent of Persian dominion over the known world. The construction of Persepolis, begun under Darius I around 515 BC and continued by his successors for more than a century, represents one of the most ambitious architectural projects of the ancient world. A carefully planned complex of palaces, administrative buildings, and ceremonial structures that incorporated architectural elements, decorative motifs, and construction techniques drawn from across the Persian Empire, and synthesized into a distinctively Persian imperial style. Archaeological investigations at Persepolis, conducted continuously since the 1930s and employing increasingly sophisticated techniques, including ground-penetrating radar, 3D laser scanning, and detailed chemical analysis of building materials, have revealed the extraordinary level of planning and coordination required to complete this massive project, including the quarrying and transport of limestone blocks weighing several tons each, the recruitment and management of craftsmen from throughout the empire, and the development of construction techniques that could accommodate the complex architectural requirements of buildings designed to host ceremonies involving representatives from dozens of different cultures and ethnic groups. The famous relief sculptures that adorn the walls and staircases of Persepolis, analyzed using techniques ranging from traditional art historical methods to advanced photogrammetry and chemical analysis of pigment residues, reveal a sophisticated program of imperial propaganda that depicted representatives of the empire's many peoples bringing tribute to the Persian king, but did so in ways that emphasized their dignity and status rather than their subjugation, reflecting the Persian approach to imperial governance that sought to incorporate, rather than merely exploit subject populations. The technical analysis of these relief sculptures has revealed construction techniques that required the coordination of skilled craftsmen from multiple traditions, including Mesopotamian experts in large-scale stone carving, Egyptian specialists in bas-relief sculpture, Greek artisans familiar with naturalistic representation techniques, and local Persian craftsmen who contributed knowledge of local materials and traditional decorative motifs, creating a synthesis of artistic traditions that could not have been achieved without the extensive cultural contacts made possible by imperial expansion. The architectural innovations developed for Persepolis, including the use of massive columns that could support roofs spanning unprecedented distances, the development of sophisticated drainage systems that could handle the seasonal rains, characteristic of the Iranian plateau, and the creation of ceremonial spaces designed to accommodate the complex protocols required for imperial court ceremonies, influenced architectural development throughout the ancient world and provided models that would be adapted and modified in subsequent imperial capitals from Alexandria to Chang'an. The administrative buildings discovered through excavations at Persepolis, including archives that contain thousands of cuneiform tablets, recording the daily business of imperial government, have provided invaluable insights into the practical functioning of Persian imperial administration, revealing systems for tax collection, military recruitment, resource allocation, and communication that enabled a relatively small Persian elite to govern effectively over territories extending from the Indus Valley to the Aegean Sea, and from Central Asia to the Nubian Cataracts. The analysis of these administrative documents, using computational techniques that can identify patterns across thousands of individual records, has revealed the sophisticated nature of Persian imperial administration, including standardized procedures for recording and transmitting information, systematic approaches to resource management that could adapt to local conditions, while maintaining overall imperial coherence, and personnel policies that successfully integrated local elites into the imperial system, while maintaining Persian control over key positions. The construction and maintenance of the royal road system, documented through archaeological surveys, satellite imagery analysis, and the careful study of ancient route descriptions, represents one of the Persian Empire's most significant achievements, creating a communication and transportation network that enabled rapid movement of messages, personnel, and resources across distances that had previously made effective imperial administration impossible. The engineering challenges overcome in constructing these roads, including the building of bridges across major rivers, the cutting of passages through mountain ranges, and the establishment of supply stations and relay points at regular intervals, required the application of engineering techniques drawn from multiple traditions, and the development of new solutions to problems that had never before been encountered. On such a scale, the famous postal relay system that operated along these roads, described by Greek historians and documented through Persian administrative records, represents an innovation in long-distance communication that enabled the Persian king to maintain direct contact with provincial governors and military commanders across the vast extent of the empire, facilitating the rapid response to local crises that was essential to imperial stability. Archaeological evidence from Persian road stations, including standardized architectural features, ceramic assemblages that show the movement of goods and people across vast distances, and inscriptions in multiple languages that reflect the cosmopolitan character of imperial administration, reveals the systematic nature of Persian efforts to create the infrastructure necessary for effective imperial governance. The water management systems constructed during the Persian period, including the extension of canal networks, the construction of large-scale irrigation projects, and the development of urban water supply systems, represent technological achievements that supported agricultural productivity and urban development across the empire while demonstrating the Persian commitment to improving the material conditions of life for their subjects. The environmental impact of Persian imperial projects, analyzed using techniques including palynology, soil analysis, and the study of ancient climate indicators, reveals the extent to which Persian policies affected the landscape and agricultural productivity of the territories they controlled, generally in ways that increased, rather than decreased, the carrying capacity of the land and the prosperity of the populations who worked it. The military organization and strategic innovations that enabled the Persian Empire to achieve and maintain dominance over the largest contiguous land empire in ancient history represent a synthesis of tactical traditions drawn from across Eurasia, combined with distinctively Persian approaches to logistics, personnel management, and strategic planning that allowed relatively small Persian forces to defeat much larger armies and subsequently garrison vast territories with limited manpower resources. The archaeological evidence for Persian military organization, recovered from excavations at military installations, battlefield sites, and weapons manufacturing centers throughout the empire, reveals a level of systematization and technological sophistication that explains the remarkable consistency of Persian military success across diverse geographical and cultural environments, from the steppes of Central Asia to the deserts of Egypt, and from the mountains of Anatolia to the river valleys of India. The famous Persian immortals, the elite guard unit that maintained a constant strength of 10,000 men and served as both the core of Persian military power and a symbol of imperial prestige, can be studied through archaeological evidence including weapons, armor fragments, and personal equipment recovered from Persian military sites, revealing standardized equipment and training that incorporated the best military technologies available from across the known world, including Scythian archery techniques, Greek hoplite armor design, Mesopotamian siege warfare methods, and indigenous Persian cavalry tactics. The composite bow that became synonymous with Persian military power represents a technological achievement that synthesized bow-making techniques from Central Asian nomadic traditions with materials and manufacturing methods derived from settled civilizations, creating weapons that combine the range and penetrating power necessary for effective cavalry archery with the reliability and ease of maintenance required for large-scale military operations across diverse climatic conditions. Metallurgical analysis of Persian weapons and armor recovered from archaeological sites has revealed manufacturing techniques that show clear influences from multiple traditions, including Central Asian methods for producing flexible scale armor, Mesopotamian techniques for forging steel sword blades, and Greek innovations in helmet design, combined with distinctively Persian approaches to weapon decoration and standardization, that enabled the mass production of high-quality military equipment. The logistics systems that supported Persian military operations, documented through the analysis of Persian military installations, supply depots, and transportation networks, reveal innovations in military organization that enable Persian armies to operate effectively at distances from their base territories that would have been impossible using the logistical methods available to earlier military powers. Archaeological evidence from Persian military camps and supply bases reveals standardized approaches to camp construction, supply storage, and equipment maintenance that allowed Persian forces to maintain operational effectiveness during extended campaigns while reducing the burden on local populations and minimizing the economic disruption caused by military operations. The Persian development of siege warfare techniques, documented through the analysis of siege sites and the study of Persian adaptations of existing siege technologies, reveals the systematic nature of Persian efforts to acquire and improve upon the best military technologies available from across their expanding empire, including Mesopotamian techniques for undermining city walls, Greek innovations in siege tower design, and Central Asian methods for conducting cavalry-based blockades of fortified positions. The integration of diverse ethnic groups into Persian military forces, documented through the analysis of military equipment, that shows the continued use of traditional weapons and fighting techniques, alongside standardized Persian equipment, reveals a Persian approach to military organization that sought to harness the distinctive military capabilities of different peoples, rather than impose uniform tactical doctrine, creating military forces that could adapt to diverse operational environments while maintaining overall strategic coherence. The Persian development of naval power, documented through archaeological evidence from Persian naval bases, harbor installations, and shipbuilding facilities, represents a major innovation for a people whose original homeland was hundreds of miles from the sea, requiring the acquisition of maritime technologies from Phoenician, Greek, and Egyptian sources and the development of administrative systems that could coordinate naval operations across multiple seas and diverse coastal environments. The famous Persian invasion of Greece, reconstructed through the analysis of archaeological evidence from both sides of the conflict, combined with careful critical analysis of literary sources, reveals the extent of Persian military capabilities at their peak, including the ability to coordinate simultaneous land and naval operations across hundreds of miles of territory, the capacity to supply massive armies operating far from Persian territory, and the sophisticated intelligence and diplomatic preparations that preceded major military campaigns. Archaeological surveys of the route of Xerxes' invasion have uncovered evidence of the massive logistical preparations required to support the largest military expedition in ancient history, including the construction of supply depots, the improvement of roads and bridges, and the establishment of communication networks that enabled the coordination of forces drawn from throughout the Persian Empire. The Persian development of military engineering capabilities, documented through the analysis of Persian fortifications, bridges, and other military construction projects, reveals technological achievements that combine the best engineering knowledge available from multiple civilizations with innovative solutions to the unique challenges posed by imperial military operations across diverse geographical environments. The impact of Persian military innovations on subsequent military development, traced through the analysis of military equipment and tactical methods adopted by Persian enemies and successors, demonstrates the lasting influence of Persian military organization on the development of warfare throughout the ancient world, establishing patterns of military organization and tactical doctrine that would influence military development for centuries after the fall of the Persian Empire. The religious and cultural policies implemented by Persian rulers represent one of the most remarkable experiments in imperial governance in ancient history, creating a system that could maintain political unity and administrative coherence across territories inhabited by dozens of different ethnic groups, practicing hundreds of different religious and cultural traditions, while avoiding the religious conflicts and cultural suppression that characterize most other ancient empires. The archaeological evidence for Persian religious policies, documented through excavations at temples, religious sites, and administrative centers throughout the empire, reveals a systematic approach to religious governance that combined genuine respect for local traditions with practical political calculations about the most effective methods for maintaining imperial stability and legitimacy. The Persian practice of supporting the reconstruction and maintenance of local temples, documented through Persian-sponsored construction projects at sites from Jerusalem to Memphis and from Sardis to Elephantine, represents more than mere political pragmatism, reflecting a distinctively Persian theological understanding that saw the gods of all peoples as manifestations of the same universal divine order that legitimized Persian imperial authority. The famous Cyrus Cylinder's proclamation of religious tolerance, analyzed not only as a political document but also as a statement of Persian religious philosophy, reveals theological concepts that show clear connections to Zoroastrian religious thought while demonstrating the Persian ability to express these concepts in terms that could be understood and accepted by subjects with radically different religious backgrounds. The development of Zoroastrianism as a Persian imperial religion, traced through the analysis of fire altars, religious inscriptions, and ritual artifacts recovered from Persian sites throughout the empire, reveals a complex process of religious development that combined traditional Indo-Iranian religious concepts with innovations that reflected the cosmopolitan character of Persian imperial culture and the practical requirements of governing a religiously diverse empire. Archaeological evidence from Persian fire temples reveals architectural innovations that incorporated elements from multiple religious traditions while maintaining the essential features required for Zoroastrian ritual practice, creating religious buildings that could serve as symbols of Persian identity, while remaining architecturally and symbolically accessible to subjects from different cultural backgrounds. The Persian adoption and adaptation of royal iconography from conquered territories, documented through the analysis of Persian royal seals, coins, and artistic representations, reveals a sophisticated understanding of the symbolic dimensions of political power and the importance of communicating imperial authority through visual languages that could be understood by diverse populations throughout the empire. The development of Persian court ceremonial, reconstructed through the analysis of ceremonial spaces at Persian palaces, artistic representations of court rituals, and administrative documents that record the protocols governing imperial ceremonies, reveals the creation of new forms of royal ritual that incorporated elements from multiple traditions, while establishing distinctively Persian approaches to the symbolic representation of imperial power. The Persian development of legal systems that could accommodate the diverse legal traditions practiced by those subjects, documented through the analysis of legal documents, administrative records, and inscriptions describing Persian legal policies, represents an innovation in imperial governance that enabled the maintenance of local legal traditions, while ensuring that imperial interests were protected and imperial authority was respected. Archaeological evidence from Persian judicial facilities and administrative centers reveals the physical infrastructure created to support this complex legal system, including courthouse buildings that incorporated architectural features designed to accommodate different cultural approaches to legal proceedings and record keeping systems that could track legal cases involving parties from different ethnic and cultural backgrounds. The Persian approach to economic policy, documented through the analysis of Persian tax records, trade documents, and archaeological evidence of commercial activity throughout the empire, reveals systematic efforts to promote economic prosperity and commercial development as means of strengthening imperial stability and increasing imperial revenues, without imposing economically destructive tribute requirements on subject populations. The Persian development of standardized coinage systems, analyzed through numismatic studies that can trace the evolution of Persian monetary policy across different regions and time periods, represents a major innovation in economic administration that facilitated commercial activity throughout the empire while providing the imperial government with new tools for economic management and resource allocation. The cultural synthesis that emerged under Persian rule, documented through the analysis of artistic, architectural, and literary developments that occurred throughout the Persian Empire, reveals the extent to which Persian policy succeeded in creating conditions for cultural innovation and exchange that enriched the civilizations of all the peoples who came under Persian rule. Archaeological evidence from Persian period sites reveals the emergence of new artistic styles, architectural forms, and craft traditions that combined elements from multiple cultures in ways that created entirely new forms of cultural expression while maintaining the distinctive characteristics that gave different ethnic groups their sense of cultural identity. The Persian development of educational systems, documented through the analysis of Persian administrative records that describe the training of imperial officials, and archaeological evidence from educational institutions throughout the empire, reveals systematic efforts to create administrative personnel who could function effectively in the multicultural environment of the Persian Empire, while maintaining loyalty to Persian imperial authority. The preservation and transmission of cultural knowledge under Persian rule, documented through the analysis of libraries, archives, and educational institutions from the Persian period, reveals the extent to which Persian policies contributed to the preservation and development of the intellectual achievements of the civilizations they conquered, creating conditions that enabled the flourishing of scholarship, literature, and scientific investigation throughout their territories. The economic foundations of the Persian Empire represent one of the most sophisticated and successful experiments in large-scale resource management in ancient history, creating systems for taxation, trade regulation, and resource allocation that could support imperial administration across 3 continents, while promoting economic development and prosperity throughout the territories under Persian control. The archaeological evidence for Persian economic policies, recovered from administrative centers, commercial sites, and production facilities throughout the empire, reveals the systematic nature of Persian efforts to create economic institutions that could harness the productive capacity of diverse regional economies, while maintaining the fiscal resources necessary to support imperial military forces and administrative apparatus. The Persian development of provincial administration, documented through thousands of administrative tablets recovered from sites like Persepolis, and analyzed using computational methods that can identify patterns across large data sets, reveal sophisticated approaches to tax collection that took into account regional economic conditions, local production capabilities, and seasonal variations in agricultural output, creating tax systems that could generate substantial imperial revenues without destroying the economic foundations on which those revenues depended. The famous Persian tribute system, described by Greek historians and documented through Persian administrative records and archaeological evidence of tribute payments, represents a carefully calibrated approach to imperial taxation that required different regions to contribute according to their particular economic strengths, with some provinces providing precious metals, others contributing military personnel, and still others supplying agricultural products or manufactured goods, according to their comparative advantages. Archaeological analysis of tribute goods recovered from Persian sites reveals the extraordinary range of products that flowed into the Persian imperial economy, including Chinese silk that had traveled the entire length of what would later become known as the Silk Road, Indian spices and precious stones, Central Asian horses and furs, Egyptian grain and linen, Greek wine and olive oil, and Mesopotamian manufactured goods, creating an economic system that connected the major production centers of the ancient world in ways that had never before been achieved. The Persian development of banking and credit systems, documented through the analysis of commercial documents from Persian period sites, and the study of Persian adaptations of existing Mesopotamian financial institutions, reveals innovations in commercial financing that enabled long-distance trade on a scale that would not be matched again until the medieval period, including the development of credit instruments that could be used across vast distances and different currency systems. The Persian approach to monetary policy, analyzed through numismatic studies that can trace the development of Persian coinage systems and their relationship to local currency traditions, reveals sophisticated understanding of the relationship between monetary policy and economic development, including the use of standardized weights and measures that facilitated commercial activity, while maintaining enough flexibility to accommodate local preferences and practices. Archaeological evidence from Persian commercial centers reveals the physical infrastructure created to support this extensive commercial network, including warehouse facilities that could store goods awaiting shipment to distant markets, standardized facilities for weighing and measuring commercial goods, and administrative buildings designed to house the personnel required to manage complex international transactions. The Persian development of transportation systems, documented through archaeological surveys of Persian roads, bridges, and harbor facilities, represents a massive investment in infrastructure that reduced the costs and risks associated with long-distance trade while enabling the rapid movement of military forces and administrative personnel that was essential to imperial control. The economic impact of Persian infrastructure investments can be measured through the analysis of trade goods found at sites throughout the empire, revealing increased volumes of long-distance trade and the appearance of goods in markets that had previously been inaccessible due to transportation costs and risks, creating economic conditions that supported population growth and urban development throughout Persian territories. The Persian approach to agricultural development, documented through the analysis of irrigation systems, agricultural tools, and crop remains recovered from Persian period sites, reveals systematic efforts to increase agricultural productivity through technological innovation, infrastructure investment, and the introduction of new crops and farming techniques that could improve yields and reduce the risks associated with environmental variability. Archaeological evidence from Persian agricultural installations reveals technological innovations that combine the best agricultural knowledge available from different regions of the empire, including Mesopotamian irrigation techniques, Central Asian crop varieties, Egyptian agricultural tools, and Greek farming methods, creating agricultural systems that could support larger populations while producing the surpluses necessary to support urban development and imperial administration. The Persian development of manufacturing industries, documented through the analysis of production sites, craft workshops, and manufactured goods recovered from archaeological sites throughout the empire, reveal systematic efforts to promote the development of specialized manufacturing capabilities that could produce the goods necessary for imperial administration, while creating employment opportunities that could absorb population growth and provide alternative sources of income for agricultural communities. The integration of local economies into the broader Persian imperial economy, documented through the analysis of changes in production patterns, trade relationships, and consumption habits that occurred under Persian rule, reveals the extent to which Persian policy succeeded in creating economic conditions that benefited local populations while strengthening overall imperial economic capacity. Archaeological evidence from Persian period sites reveals improvements in material standards of living for ordinary people throughout the empire, including access to a wider variety of consumer goods, improved housing construction, and expanded opportunities for social and economic mobility that reflected the general prosperity that Persian policies created throughout their territories. The administrative genius of the Persian Empire, which enabled a relatively small Persian elite to govern effectively over territories inhabited by millions of people representing dozens of different ethnic groups, languages, and cultural traditions, represents one of the most remarkable achievements in the history of governmental organization, creating institutional systems that balance central control with local autonomy in ways that maintain imperial unity while avoiding the rebellions and administrative breakdowns that plagued other ancient empires. The archaeological evidence for Persian administrative systems, recovered from governmental centers throughout the empire and analyzed using techniques ranging from traditional document analysis to advanced database management systems that can identify patterns across thousands of individual records, reveals the systematic nature of Persian efforts to create governmental institutions that could adapt to local conditions while maintaining overall imperial coherence and effectiveness. The Persian development of provincial government, documented through administrative records from provincial capitals and archaeological evidence from Persian governmental facilities, reveals sophisticated approaches to delegation of authority that enabled local officials to respond effectively to regional conditions and local needs while ensuring that imperial policies were implemented consistently and imperial interests were protected throughout the empire. The famous Persian satrap system, described by Greek historians and documented through Persian administrative records, represents an innovation in imperial governance that solved the fundamental problem faced by all large-scale political organizations: how to maintain central control while enabling effective local administration across vast distances and diverse populations. Archaeological analysis of Persian provincial administration centers reveals standardized governmental facilities that incorporated local architectural traditions while providing the physical infrastructure necessary for the complex administrative activities required to govern large, diverse populations, including record-keeping systems that could track tax collections, military recruitment, and judicial activities across entire provinces. The Persian development of communication systems, documented through the analysis of Persian postal facilities, communication protocols, and the famous Royal Road Network, reveals the extent to which effective imperial administration depended on the ability to transmit information rapidly and reliably across vast distances, enabling central authorities to monitor local conditions, coordinate policy implementation, and respond quickly to emerging problems or opportunities. Archaeological evidence from Persian communication installations reveals technological innovations that combined existing communication techniques with new methods adapted to the particular challenges posed by imperial administration, including standardized relay stations that could facilitate the rapid movement of messages across difficult terrain and diverse climatic conditions. The Persian approach to personnel management, documented through administrative records that describe the recruitment, training, and career advancement of imperial officials, reveals systematic efforts to create a professional, administrative class that could function effectively in the multicultural environment of the Persian Empire while maintaining loyalty to Persian imperial authority and commitment to Persian administrative policies. The integration of local elites into Persian administrative systems, documented through the analysis of personnel records and archaeological evidence of Persian administrative facilities that incorporated local officials, reveals a Persian approach to imperial governance that sought to harness local knowledge and local legitimacy while maintaining overall Persian control over key governmental functions. Archaeological evidence from Persian administrative centers reveals the physical manifestations of this approach, including governmental facilities that incorporated local architectural traditions and ceremonial spaces that could accommodate local customs, while serving Persian administrative functions. The Persian development of legal and judicial systems, documented through the analysis of legal documents, court records, and archaeological evidence from Persian judicial facilities, reveals innovations in imperial law that enabled the maintenance of local legal traditions while ensuring that imperial authority was respected and imperial interests were protected. Throughout the territories under Persian control, the Persian approach to record keeping and information management analyzed through the study of thousands of administrative documents recovered from Persian sites, and the analysis of Persian archival systems, reveals sophisticated understanding of the information requirements of large-scale administration and the development of